Hello, so here we are with a video review of the Samsung Galaxy S3, 2012's most hyped and talked about phone and most likely to be 2012's most purchased smartphone. It's the successor to the Samsung Galaxy S2, which has been extremely successful in its own right over the last 12 or 18 months and is still a very, very good phone. If you can't stretch to the price of the Galaxy S3, you won't be disappointed with the Galaxy S2. And for many, the Galaxy S2 might still be the device of choice. So looking at the two devices, you can see there are some similarities in terms of the design ethos. But the S3 is quite a bit bigger. It's got a 4.8-inch screen as opposed to the 4.3 on the Galaxy S2. Now for a lot of people this is actually going to be too big. It can be quite difficult to actually stretch across the screen. Now I come to this review having used the Xperia S, and I've used the S3 for 10 days solid now as my personal phone. So I've got a good understanding of what's good and what's not so good on the Galaxy S3. But if I bring in the Xperia S for you to actually have a look at, whilst it's got a 4.3-inch screen like the Galaxy S2, you can see that the physical size in comparison to the S3 isn't really that much different. The Xperia S is actually a little bit thicker, but the S3 has been flattened out. But there's a lot of chassis to the Xperia S, and I think in terms of the design, Samsung have done a good job. It feels really slim, and I think it actually feels better in the hand than this HTC One X we've got here. In terms of physical size, there isn't actually a lot between them, but it may sound silly, but when I've used the Galaxy S3, I don't feel like it could slip out my hand quite as easily as the HTC One X. Now that's just my personal opinion. In terms of actual product quality, HTC is better in terms of the materials. It just feels that little bit better. The Galaxy S3, it's an expensive phone and just some bits feel a little bit cheap. And two things that really make this feel cheap are when it comes to the notification lights. Now, they're all well and good. They illuminate and allow you to use the buttons, but there's a lot of light bleeding around them, and it's not so bad in the day, but when it actually comes to night, yes, the icon is illuminated, but you've also got this sort of glow around it which just detracts from the final design. And the same goes for the flash. It's massively bright if you use it as a torch, and it's extremely good as a flash when taking photos. But the first few times I noticed that when I was switching the flash on, I was actually getting light leaking out through the edging of the phone. Now, it's not a big issue, and to be honest, a lot of people won't notice it. But when you're paying this much for a phone, you feel like you're being cheated in some respects, and you just don't get that on the likes of the HTC One X. So those are just a couple of the downsides that I've noticed initially on this. Now, of course, we're talking about an Android phone here. It's got a quad-core processor in it, so it's massively capable, and very few things are actually going to challenge this in terms of processing power, and that goes for the One X. Not many of us will actually use the full 4 cores that are available to us. Having said that, it's great to be future-proofed and know that the device has the capability should we need it. Now, in terms of overall Android experience, it's very similar to a lot of other devices. You've got the levels of customization that you'd expect. You can download your apps, you've got Google Maps, you've got YouTube, you've got web browsing, and it's all lovely on this S3. The screen is superb, and in a minute I'll show you some sample video footage. So, what makes this really different is what Samsung have done to it, and I hate to admit it that Samsung have done a really good job here. Now, HTC Sense on the One X is good, it's intelligent, it takes Android to that next level, but I think Samsung have gone one step further on this. Now, there's lots of features they talked about in their press release, and we've demoed in the unboxing videos and other videos on our YouTube channel, but the S3 is probably one of the first smartphones to really encapsulate the whole intelligent sort of ethos and direction that manufacturers are now taking. Motorola have tried it with Motocast, HTC have it with HTC Sense and Image Sense, but Samsung have probably gone the furthest in terms of what this device can do to make it more intelligent, more user-friendly, and essentially become something we rely on and then expect in future devices. Now, the Smart Stay, where the screen doesn't actually go off if you're looking at it. So in times past, you could be browsing a web page, you could be reading a long paragraph of text, and your backlight would go out. You just tap the screen or press the power button, and it all seems very straightforward, and we kind of got used to that. But no one really sort of clicked, and I certainly didn't, to think, why doesn't the backlight just stay on? And Samsung have this feature now that if you're looking at the screen, it can detect that you're still looking at the screen and keeps the backlight on for you. That's sheer genius. It just makes the basic things that little bit better, and we will expect that of future devices. You know, you may not think it's a big thing to touch the screen, but when you get used to something like that, it becomes incredibly powerful, and it's one of those things that make this device that little bit better. There's loads of other sort of smart actions on this device in terms of what you can do. The direct call, where you could be in a contact, rather than tapping the screen to call them, just pick it up and hold it to your ear. That's a fantastic idea, and one that works in practice. There are some other little quirks on here that probably won't really work in everyday life for everyone. One such feature is if you were in your contacts and you scroll down your list of contacts, we all know how annoying it can be to have to scroll back up or find a letter on the side. What you can just do is just double tap the list and it takes you back to the top. That's a really good, quirky sort of thing, but unless you're doing that on a daily basis, I kind of think it's one of those things that you could forget about. It may sound a bit dumb, but when you're actually scrolling through the list, it's just natural to scroll. It's not quite so natural to tap the top of your phone. Having said that, it's a good feature nonetheless. So we've got S-Voice on here, which is Samsung's equivalent to Siri. Does it work? Yes. Will many people use it? I'm not convinced. I just think it's a little bit gimmicky. Now, it does work. I want to stress that. You can do things with it. So for some people, it'll be really good. And probably where it comes into its own most is when you're actually perhaps in a car and you can talk to it, where you don't need to touch it. But I think for a lot of people, you're unlikely to ask questions of it. But you can see here we've got a very Siri-like layout, and it goes off and it's listening to me now, and it'll probably come back and say it doesn't understand what I'm saying. It shows the way that phones are going and how they can be more intelligent, but I'm not convinced that we're quite ready for this yet. So we've also got S-Memo on here, which we've seen on the likes of the Galaxy Note, and that allow you to draw pictures, capture a picture, annotate it, loads of things, and it's a really nifty sort of way of keeping your life organised, because we can all easily forget about things, and this makes it that little bit simpler. Does it work on the S3? Yes, it does. One of the things that makes the Note so powerful is the fact that it's got a stylus and you can actually write on screen with it. And you can do this with the S3 using this, their C Pen. But it's not quite as good as the Galaxy Note. It's more of a fancy stylus. It looks just like a pen, it feels like a pen, it feels comfortable in the hand. But it's not as accurate for me, and I've tried writing some notes on it, and maybe I need to give it more time, try it a little bit more, but I'm not sure it works quite as well, but it is nice to have it there. You can still type using the on-screen keyboard, so there is capability in terms of what you can do. It's a good way to perhaps pass some time, even do some doodles, give it to the kids. You know, there's lots of options that you have there, and the fact that you can share it via Facebook, Twitter, connect to Evernote. There's lots of scope there, and it makes it more powerful, and all works as part of this integration into your daily life. And I can certainly say I am probably relying on the S3 more now because I've tried to use the features such as S-Note and things like that. Of course you can download all your apps, and you can see I've downloaded them on here. You've got your standard sort of phone features, and all the phone things work very well. It's very clear. The 4.8-inch AMOLED display makes things appear crisp. The layout of the buttons on screen and during a call is very simple. It's very easy to use. There's not much restriction there, and I'm quite pleased by that. The physical menu button is, a capacitive menu button is nice. Coming from Android 2.3, I found that something like the One X can be a bit of a pain because you've actually got to click settings on the screen, whereas I'm kind of used to going menu settings and you can get into this. So it's got 16 gig on board on this device, but 32 and 64 gigabyte models are said to be available in time. And of course you've got a micro SDXC card slot under the back cover here, so that gives you plenty of scope in terms of memory expansion. So we've got that under there, and we've also got a micro SIM card slot. And the big thing on here is the battery. It's at 21,000 milliamp hours, so it's bigger than a lot of devices, and it's removable. Massive advantage over the One X, as is the micro SD card slot. In terms of actual battery life so far, it's safe to say I'm getting a day out of it. It's a bit of a push to get anything more than that. I do tend to charge it every night. A light user may get 2 days out of it. The camera, 8 megapixels, full 1080p resolution. It's very, very good. Using the flash at night, I was extremely impressed. It doesn't boast to have all these technical advantages like the One X with sensing how much flash you need. It just took a very good photo at night. In terms of daylight shots, in bright light they look absolutely fantastic. However, I did notice that it did struggle at some points with the light, depending upon the conditions. And it's not to say that the camera was like inferior or bad, just at some points it wasn't as good as I thought it was actually going to be. Even in low light, some of the pictures and the quality are actually quite good. There's lots of settings when it actually comes to the camera and the video in terms of what you can choose, from the exposure to the zoom. You can use the volume key as a zoom function when recording. Let's just take a look at some sample video they put on here. Now this has been obviously created for the S3. So I don't know how well that actually picks up on camera, but the screen is sensational when it comes to this. It's really, really crisp. The colours are really, really rich. With the video, you do have this option, as was demonstrated, to sort of, let's just show you, actually pop it out on screen in a little pop out up here. So you could be doing other things and the video is still there, and you can move it around. You could be on a web page and still viewing your video, and then you just tap back into it. Clever. It's a more intelligent way, and it feels more like a desktop experience on your mobile. How many people use it, I don't honestly know. I feel that the only times I'd really want to do that is if I was just chilling out, browsing a few web pages, watching a movie at the same time, but I'd probably get a bit frustrated that I constantly have to move the video around as I browse different web pages. Another point, just going back to the camera, is the lack of a physical camera button. That annoys me a little bit. Maybe there will be a fix in time that you could use sort of the power button or the home button as some sort of camera key. It's just a shame that there isn't that physical button there, because if you are using this on a cold day, you've got to touch the screen and you might have gloves on, and that's where a physical button could come in handy. You know, making a big issue of it. It's not huge, but it would be a nice thing to have. There are dual microphones on here when it comes to video recording, which picks up sound better. And talking of sound, we've got the rear-facing speaker, which is actually pretty good. A lot of mobile devices can sound a bit tinny when they get loud. It would be nice to have stereo speakers. I think that would finish the S3 off pretty well, but the sound on here is good considering it's just that one speaker on the back there. There are so many different features and functions in the S3. This video review isn't going to cover them all, and I don't suggest by any minute that you'll get the full impression of how good the S3 is from this video, but you just keep on noticing new things about it. You've got an LED indicator that you can change the colour of. There's loads of settings. You've got all the motions that are briefly touched upon, from just simple things to how the way the moving of icons actually on your home screen, the fact that you can press and hold, and rather than skipping through each home screen, you press, hold and move the device and the screens move with it. You've got the turn over to mute like you have on the HTC One series, although there are lots of apps that help that. The onboard memory, you've got GPS, you've got GLONASS as well for better location. There's going to be a whole range of accessories available for the S3 to make it more powerful. And just some of the other smaller things that I really want to touch on here. You've got Wi-Fi hotspot and everything built in, you've got NFC, you've got Android sort of S-Beam as well for sharing content, you've got Buddy Share when it comes to photos as well, but you've got simple little things such as being able to change the font style and the font size. Now, for a lot of people it doesn't really matter what font's on the screen, but I think that's a really sort of nifty little way of actually personalising your device that little bit more. You've got all the wallpaper customization things, so you can change your home screen, your lock screen. You've even got different options for the sort of image on screen, so whether you have it as a movie, natural, standard, dynamic, to get the best out of the display on the S3 for the content that you're actually showing. So that is my sort of overview review of the Samsung Galaxy S3. Would I use one? Yes, I think I'm going to move to this as my everyday phone. It's not perfect, it's a big stretch to get across this screen, it's going to be a little bit too big for some. For the likes of those who have been using the iPhone, I think something like the Xperia P is actually the perfect size phone. And if we actually compared the S3 to the iPhone 4S, you can actually see the size difference. It's remarkably different, and whether on the iPhone 5 we'll actually see a bigger display or not, I think if you're moving from the likes of an Apple, the S3 could just be a little bit too big. But having said that, the experience you're going to get is sensational. Coming from a point where I didn't really want to like the S3 because there was so much hype about it, and I thought the S2 was a great phone anyhow, the S3 actually does live up to it, and I'm not just saying that. I've used it, I've experienced it, and can say it's a great investment if you're in the market for a new smartphone. There are so many similar devices, but this is the pinnacle at the moment of smartphones, and starts to depict the future of smartphones and how they become more intelligent, you rely on them more, and they fit into your everyday life. So, thanks for watching. Be sure to check out our other videos on our YouTube channel, youtube.com/Clove Technology.